Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. The Senator Phil Perry is alongside. We are in that limbo between conference championship and the Super Bowl. The New England Patriots have long since been eliminated from contention. They've had an active offseason, but we are at a bit of a lull. So what are we going to do, folks? What are we going to do? We have to keep the presses moving. Going to keep the trains running on time. So here's your podcast. What we're going to discuss today is maybe a little wacky, but it's going to be a little bit of trade innovation because the Patriots offseason makeover continues. Phil, free agency ain't what you hope anymore sometimes. Drafts may not pan out. So that means Goofus Elliott Wolf might have to get innovative. Would you trade the 4th overall pick for a player? Throw it out there. Unlikely to happen, but let's do it anyway. Micah Parsons. Would you trade it for Micah Parsons and the contract that he will have to get?
Yes, I would.
Me too. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Next week, we will do one player as a trade target, and we will move on throughout the offseason. So stay tuned.
I like that idea. I don't think the Cowboys would ever do it. I don't think the Patriots would ever do it. I would do it. It's a premium position, Tom. Somebody you know you're going to get high-end play from for a long time, hopefully. And so that's something I would be willing to do, especially in this draft where obviously you don't need a quarterback, but it looks like you might be reaching, hoping for a franchise cornerstone kind of talent, even at 4 overall, which is sad to say, but you know, there might just not be that many blue chip players in this class. They might be gone by the time you get to 4 overall.
I want you to be honest, Phil. Did the extremely pregnant pause have to do with the absurdity of my bringing up Micah Parsons?
It was partly that. It was also partly me looking at players. It was also, sorry, no, it was partly the absurdity of Micah Parsons. Number two, it was partly me not being sure if you were going to continue rolling there. And number three, I was not
doing some research.
Yeah, I was doing a little research. I was trying to be ready to contribute in a different way by looking at a list of free agents from 2026 or for 2026, because those are the kinds of players who might be available in a trade.
I have some guys.
Okay.
I have another player who I said should be fitted for a Hall of Fame jacket during the draft. I said that he would be one of the greatest players of all time, set all kinds of records. That hasn't happened for Kyle Pitts. He is on his 5th-year option right now. I'm not talking about trading 4th overall, but he's making $10 million this year. He's entering the last year of his deal, taking the same year as Mac Jones. Our friend James Palmer had this to say when asked about Kyle Pitts and some offseason trade targets. Said, I'm just looking at the way things went in Atlanta. The progression of targets went Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts. Are you going to give a massive contract extension to a 4th overall pick who has underperformed? Obviously, there's been some injuries. But if he's 4th on your list of where you want the football to go, he has to be considered. Now, I get resistance from people with bigger football brains than mine, like Brian Hoyer, that the Patriots don't need to do anything at tight end because they've got Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper was a coming on. I think that means, okay, well, this works in our offense, and it will continue to work with Josh McDaniels. Keep loading up on tight ends. And you know what? Kyle Pitts averaged 15.1 yards per catch on 68 catches in his rookie year. He is not what we would call a classic tight end. Phil, should the Patriots do everything in their power to land Kyle Pitts? I'm saying a second and Jalen Polk.
No.
Why?
I don't care. I don't care enough. I don't like him. Sorry. I know you love him. I'm still, you can't dangle Micah Parsons in front of me and then ask me and expect me to be interested in Kyle Pitts. I'm sorry. You've presented me with a beautiful, 16 ounce, New York strip, and then you ripped it away and you've given me a Happy Meal burger. Yes.
All right, then how about Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson is a player that we could talk about here, Phil.
That is something I'm much more interested in. In that, I would be willing, again, I'd be willing to part with the fourth overall pick for Garrett
For
Wilson. No
Garrett
question.
Wilson.
Yes. Give him to me.
1 year left on his rookie contract. A series of sweeping changes inbound for that club. Who's the friggin' head coach again?
For the New York Jets, that'd be Aaron Glenn.
Thank you. Um, I would make that move as well. Would you do it for four, Phil? I think I would do it for four.
I'd do it for four. I would not do it for some of the others that are sort of in that class with him that are going to be free agents. Not this offseason, but next. Drake London was a first round pick, same draft. Chris Olave, first round pick, same draft. I'm not doing it for those guys, but I would be willing to do it for Garrett Wilson. I don't, and Tom, let me add one more name there. I would not be willing to give up four overall for DK Metcalf, who's also scheduled to be a free agent. He's just further along in his career,
I
obviously,
agree.
than those guys. He is 29, and let me look really quickly right here. You have Garrett Wilson is 26. So those 3 years matter to me.
It's a nice segue, Phil. DK Metcalf, I'm sure many of you have heard this, spoke earlier this week to Boston native Katie Nolan. And this is what he had to say about the prospect of coming to the great Northeast.
No.
What? You couldn't see yourself ever living in Massachusetts?
Look at how long it's taking you to say the word. No. No, it's not a desirable place in my opinion.
Phil, that's going to be an obstacle for this team. How do the Patriots convince players, aside from the simple answer of pay them exorbitant amounts, how do they convince players that, hey, this is a franchise you want to be a part of? And I remember encountering this when you were in 8th grade. You would look at the free agents in 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001 and say, how are they going to get better at these spots? Who are they going to bring in? Can they go get, a Rondé Gadsden? That was a guy I remember beating the drum for. Go get a Rondé Gadsden. But it's an uphill climb. Are they a year away, the Patriots, from being able to be mentioned as a desirable location because of the things that, for instance, the climate, the notion that they're cheap, the negative publicity the franchise has taken on, Bill Belichick pointing out happily so that everybody across the country, even those who don't really pay attention that much, can now know that it sucks up here tax-wise for millionaires. Are they a year away from being appetizing as a locale?
I don't know, Tom. It feels like some of the things that make them unappetizing as a locale aren't going anywhere. I guess until you become a great team, I know that's what you're getting at, until you become a really good team, a la Buffalo, right? Nobody's looking to go to Buffalo for all the same reasons they're not looking to come to Massachusetts. The weather, the taxes, it's probably a little bit worse in Massachusetts than it is in New York. I won't pretend to know all the ins and outs of the tax situations that people are dealing with in Western New York there. But, they eventually were able to attract players because they clearly had a great quarterback and they clearly were going to be in the championship mix year in and year out. The Patriots are at least a year from that, if not 2 or 3. And so that's probably what you have to do unless you're willing to way overpay and pay the quote unquote suck tax. And so we were talking about some of these guys last night. T. Higgins is a good example. T. Higgins, I've seen projections for T. Higgins having sort of a total value on his contract, his next contract being somewhere in the, in a 4-year, high $20 million, $27, $28 million per year kind of range, which would put him in the top 10 at receiver. And, a total value of 110 million. Again, you're like talking about top 10, but that might be sort of for a locale that he's interested in. If he's not interested in the Patriots, then what do you have to give him in order to encourage him to want to be here? Does the total value have to get up closer to, 130 and put him right behind CeeDee Lamb, who's at 136 total value, or Justin Jefferson, who's at 140 total value? Like maybe he's not asking for those guys' contracts, but something right behind when he's not really that kind of player. that might be the suck tax that you're talking about for the Patriots in order to get these guys here.
This leads us a little prematurely to a point that Mike Florio was making that I have wholeheartedly agreed with. And it's going to be sooner than people realize an issue the Patriots have to confront. And that is the rising prices all across the NFL, the rapidly rising prices. And those prices are rapidly rising because the new money that keeps coming in from the CBA means the salary cap goes up. So if you and me are making $5 an hour and the cap is, 10, so we're right at the cap. If they come back the next year and say, all right, well, now the cap is 25 and we're both making 5, that means by percentage, we're going to go up a crap ton. But some guys are still going to be like under contract. Say John Henry's under contract for 4. We come up earlier, we get these massive contracts. John's still down there at 4. He's working on that contract of 4, but he's going to come flying up. So I say all of that because Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk mentioned the Jamar Chase contract. And in pointing it out, he talked about Duke Tobin, Bengals executive, speaking about Chase's contract. And he says, based on Duke Tobin's comments from Wednesday, the Bengals plan to take a cookie cut of the contracts at the top of the market, where Justin Jefferson leads all receivers with a new money average of $35 million. It's much more complicated. The market went up significantly last year from the upper 20s to the mid 30s. It will go up again. Salary cap will again increase. At a minimum, Chase, not T. Higgins, but Chase should win a deal with a new money average of $40 million. And Florio goes on to say, think of some of the quarterbacks making more than $50 million per year. Would you rather have Jamar Chase or Jalen Hurts, Chase or Tua, Chase or Jared Goff, Chase or Trevor Lawrence, Chase or Justin Herbert, Chase or Dak Prescott? On one level, it's hard to say, but the fact is, when you're talking about these contracts, T. Higgins might walk in and say, yeah, well, I know I'm not Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase right now, but it's not my fault the market's gone up so much. So I have to leapfrog those guys just to keep up percentage-wise with what the market is bearing. So he could wander around saying, you got to pay me $35 million, just like Justin Jefferson. You have to make me the highest paid because actually Justin Jefferson is now underpaid.
Oh, boy. I mean, that would be the argument to make if you're his agent. I do feel like somebody like Higgins really needs somebody else to kind of reset the market in order for him to pass the guys that are currently setting the market, if that makes sense. I think it'd be really hard for him to walk in and say, you got to pay me Justin Jefferson money. I know the cap has gone up. I know where the game is going. I know what my teammate Jamar Chase is about to be paid. And so you need to fit me in here. I think until those contracts, those record-setting contracts actually get signed, I just feel like it's going to be hard for a team to say yes to that. But you might be right. And so, listen, you add that on top of whatever the Patriots are going to have to pay in addition to whatever T. Higgins market bears, and you could be talking about something insane. I mean, to me, Tom, T. Higgins in the same range, average per year as A.J. Brown, who's at 32, or Tyreek Hill, who's at 30, or, Devontae Adams, when he got his deal, he's at 28. Like, you're going to pay T. Higgins the same or more than what Devontae Adams got when he was the best receiver in the league, basically. I guess you are, or maybe even a little bit more than that. It's a lot for a guy that you haven't really seen perform as a true number one, and he's had trouble staying on the field of late. Like, he is not a perfect player. I acknowledge that. As much as I think the Patriots should pursue him aggressively, he's not a perfect player. But given their needs and given their resources right now, he's the best they can do. And that is, unless they can trade for Garrett Wilson, or they could, trade a second-round pick for DK Metcalf. That's the other way of getting guys here, Tom, is you don't convince them, you just trade for them.
100%.
And you force them to come.
Big advocate. And that's why, interestingly, as you bring that up, you mentioned Devontae Adams. He has a contract with the Jets right now that is a little insane. He has, I think, $35 million base in 2025. You can, as the Patriots, trade for that and fit that contract. And then bring him in with the understanding we're going to extend and drop it down. He does have history and a good relationship with Josh McDaniels. He's played in New York. He's played in Green Bay. He understands the cold. He understands those circumstances. I look at Davante Adams as somebody who's flying under the radar. And again, you have to kind of get some of these distressed players at your wide receiver position. That's why Chris Godwin with a dislocated ankle, or Keenan Allen coming off kind of a down year with Chicago. Those are players I look at because what's the kid from Arizona, Phil?
Tet McMillan.
Okay, Tet McMillan. Who was the kid from Ole Miss? Laquan
Treadwell.
Yeah, he might have Laquan Treadwell's traits.
Oh,
I don't know.
Oh,
so
slander.
He was a good player in college, McClellan.
He was.
Nice kid too. Be that as it may, you have to look at this and say, how can I get innovative to get one of these players who can really change the atmosphere for our entire offense at the wide receiver position? Because Jalen Polk does. I'm going to be candid. Jalen Polk doesn't seem to be that guy right now, Phil. So you have to go. And I have now brought up Davante Adams, DK Metcalf, Chris Godwin, Keenan Allen, Garrett Wilson, and T. Higgins. I think you target all of them, but especially Davante Adams.
Well, but again, so some of those guys would be trades and some of them would be free agent signings,
yes.
Right? So, it just depends on what you're willing to spend. And the trades do hurt, if you're giving up a legit pick,
Kyle
they
Pitts
hurt.
Too. Kyle Pitts, too.
Kyle Pitts, of course, can't leave him out. Calvin Johnson, was that the comp coming out of college for him? It was something like that. At the tight end
I said
position.
It would be twice as good as Megatron.
So it just depends on how you want to spend your resources, what you want to save in terms of your draft capital. If you do want to, at your, in your heart of hearts, you want to be a draft and develop team. I just think you might need to spend and you might need to get creative and be aggressive this offseason in order to buy yourselves the time to be the draft and develop team that you want to be. And I know that sounds contradictory. Well, you're saying in order for us to be a draft and develop team, we actually have to spend through the nose. Yeah, because right now you are that bad. Your roster is that bad. If you want to draft and develop, that's great. But that drafted and developed roster might not be ready for 3 more years. So what are you going to do between now and then? You're just going to sit and wait and sit on your hands and be the worst team in the division and one of the worst teams in the league for, going on 5 years? Like, that to me is unacceptable. And so you have to get aggressive. You have to get creative. We talk about, all these receivers, and I love talking about the receiver position. There are some of these guys that are in that DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson class of, well, they're not free agents now, but they could get there pretty soon. And if their teams aren't dead set on paying them, there's some left tackles out there too, Tom, that are enticing to me. Colton Miller is a little bit older. He's 31, but great athlete. He's with Vegas right now. Another name I'd be looking at, he was a top 10 pick a few years ago. He's still pretty young. He's 26, is Charles Cross. He's the left tackle in Seattle. And so, to me, I might be willing to give up for Charles Cross, 26, left tackle, good player. I might be willing to give up this year's 4th overall pick to get that guy, just to know that I have that guy there for the next 10 years. That's the kind of thing that, I think they should be looking at.
Another guy that we can mention at the tackle position, he's been an absolute abject disaster for the New York Giants, but it is worth mentioning Evan Neal. Evan Neal, ladies and gentlemen, he is a first-round pick who's entering that situation. And the main reason I bring up Evan Neal here is, as I was doing my research and trying to come up with some candidates I saw on Pro Football Focus, that Neal might be boxed out of a right tackle spot for good there because of Jermaine Illuminor. So between Jermaine Illuminor, Ted Karras, Joe Thuney, Shaq Mason, they had an offensive line, Bill. They had an offensive flipping line.
Did you know it's as likely for Joe Thuney to make a Super Bowl in his career as it is for Patrick Mahomes to complete a pass? I saw that stat today.
No way.
Joe Thuney's made the Super Bowl in 2/3 of his NFL years here. Better part of the last decade. Pretty incredible. Anyway, continue on. You're on a good
How
rant.
many has he played in?
This is going to be his sixth in 9 years.
That's so great. He was such a dink too, right?
No, stop it.
He
One of the
was the
best,
nicest
one of
guy.
the best people we've come across in that locker room.
He
Just
was so
so
great.
pleasant and just do whatever he's asked and just happy to, happy to be contributing. And I'm sure we'll talk to him again. We'll find him at media night. We talked to him last year. He was great. We'll talk to him again at media night. He's the best.
So another question too, related to finances, because that's what we got to do now, folks. You know that. We know that. We all know that. You're going to have Christian Gonzalez and Drake May, and if Drake May continues to trend as he is, if we're paying Trevor Lawrence $50 million and Tua $50 million, and Drake May continues on an upward arc, he's a Pro Bowler, Phil. If he continues on an upward arc, that could be a $65 million contract by 2028. Never mind Christian Gonzalez the year before. Drake May has to be done. So the Patriots have cash coming at them. So it might be smarter to fully stay on board with draft and develop instead of going for a player that you have to trade for, T. Higgins, for instance, so it doesn't tie your hands. Thoughts and feelings, Phil?
Yeah, I do get that, but those contracts are still a couple years away.
They are.
And I just have a problem with being as bad as they are and saying, well, we've got two big contracts coming down the pike here. We can't be
right.
We can't be spending like drunken sailors. I'm like, no, no, for the next couple of years, I get it. It's hard to thread that needle of, well, can you spend like drunken sailors for 2 years and then have all that money you just spent kind of come off your books so that then you can pay Drake May and Christian Gonzalez? It usually doesn't work like that. If you're really paying for some of these guys, if it's Ronnie Stanley or if it's T. Higgins, like you might be giving out some longer term deals that are going to carry you into that period of time where you'd like to pay Christian Gonzalez and Drake May. So I get it. It's a hard thing for them to try to navigate, but not only are you trying to max out what you have while Drake May is on a low money contract, you're also trying to figure out what he can do and how far he can take you. And so part of that is surrounding him with pieces that are ready to play right now. Even if they draft a tackle at 4 overall and you feel pretty good about that guy, there's a chance it takes him a year. Will Campbell's a good example. Now he's played 3 years in the SEC, and so maybe he's as ready to go as anyone in this draft. I believe he's also still just 21 years old.
Wow.
So like there's some real development that's about to take place with this guy. And if he's not the player you're hoping for him to be this year, it might be next year or the year after that. But, now you're talking about wasted years of Drake May's early career where you're hoping to get a good sense of who he is and what his ceiling is. And so that to me is part of the reason why they should be very willing to spend right now as well.
Yeah. And I think the question becomes too, what makes Robert Kraft recoil more? Price tags or a disinterested fan base or an empty Gillette Stadium or, him in effigy outside the stadium, which at times it seems like is not just around the corner. So to me, I would say it's probably the latter. He would rather pay the money and return to the good graces of the New England fans as much as he can, because the guy who's vilified a little bit more than someone who has been a 30-year owner ought to be, but be that as it may, speaking of vilified, we do spend a fair amount of time vilifying the final 5-6 seasons, maybe even 7 seasons of Bill Belichick here in New England, and the condition he left the team in, and the cut of his jib in general during those final 7 seasons. However, I will not countenance the amount of Andy Reid v. Bill Belichick conversation that we are engaging in. Yes, Andy Reid right now might be the preferable head coach, and there is more than one way to skin a cat. That cat being a successful football team. Bill skinned the cat with no anesthesia. Did it 25 years of that. Ended up with a lot of nice fur on his wall. Pelts, so to speak. Andy Reid's the kinder, gentler, 70-odd-year-old Wilfred Brimley grandfatherly type who can talk about bundle rooskies, and as a result, he continues on. But do not let yourself be cowed into the idea, Phil, that Andy Reid's resume measures up to Bill Belichick's, okay? Because even if Andy Reid gets to 4 Super Bowls, he'll still have 2 more to add before he equals Bill in Super Bowls. And I do want to remind you to look at the near misses, because you can say, well, Andy Reid in Philadelphia, He got his ass summarily handed to him by Bill Belichick in the 2024 Super Bowl. Bill, ass handing in Super Bowls? No, he lost them though. But look at these near misses. 6 Super Bowls, Phil. Near misses in 2006, his own fault. The Patriots shouldn't have been on the road in the AFC Championship. GM Bill hosed them. 2007, it just happened. 2011, you had an injured Gronk. Gronk was healthy. He makes that Hail Mary catch off the tip. 2012, also an injured Gronk. They probably would have gotten reamed by Seattle, but would have given some resistance. 2013, Wes Welker kills Aqib Talib. That was an issue. 2015.
Injured Gronk that year, too.
Also an injured Gronk, thank you. 2015, could have won that game where Brady took untold amounts of abuse. Wasn't for Jamie Collins twice getting beaten by Owen Daniels for touchdowns. 2017, it's Bill's own fault. So that's 7 different Super Bowls, near miss wins. And I'm going to include the AFC champion. Obviously, 06, they would have absolutely gobsmacked the Chicago Bears. Bill could have won 13 friggin' Super Bowls, if not for his own hubris and GMing at times, if not for just football being football or injuries. Don't give me Andy Reid's the greatest coach of all time, Phil.
I'm with you. I still am going Bill Belichick here, and I do give Bill Belichick credit for even though he had his misses, there's no question, for building those teams and for helping Tom Brady and the Patriots sustain the success that they were able to sustain over a long period of time, which Andy Reid, I'm sure he's had plenty of say in terms of personnel over the years, but that's generally speaking not thought to be his domain. And so I give Bill a lot of credit there as well. And the argument of what he's been able to do without his Hall of Fame quarterback is really the one, though, that I think keeps the argument afloat, period. Is, well, yeah, he got his ass handed to him by Bill Belichick in 2004, but at least he got to 4 NFC title games with Donovan McNabb. What did Bill do without Tom Brady? They were struggling to win 4 games at times.
Donovan McNabb was like the 2nd overall pick.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just saying he does have a positive track record as a coach without his Hall of Fame quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Bill Belichick without Tom Brady does not have a winning record as a head coach. Does not have the kinds of playoff
success.
Yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? The pelts on the wall. He doesn't have trophies, but he's got pelts. Andy Reid does without
83 and 104. Bill is without Tom Brady. That's insane.
That hurts him in this argument.
Certainly,
I still give it to him, but it does hurt him. It's the one thing that Andy Reid has that Bill doesn't.
Will Bill's success or failure at North Carolina color at all feelings about him as an overall head coach? Like if he goes down there and they go, 3-10, 5-9, how many games they played down there anyway? Be that as it may. Will people look at him and say, will it more fully bolster the idea that Brady was Bill without Brady is pedestrian? He's not. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
No, I know what you're saying. I think for the people who feel that way, that ship has already sailed. And I'm not sure, what he does in the NIL era, 2025, where he's in his, he's into his 70s now and he's working with teenagers. Like, I don't think that should impact him in that way. I'm sure it will in some people's eyes. But if you're already there, you're already there. And you probably were there in 2020 when Tom Brady's winning the Super Bowl without Bill, and you didn't even really know what Bill was going to be without Brady long term. I think if he goes down there and wins, Tom, that to me is really interesting. I do think that, then the narrative changes a little bit, and it's, hey, his time sort of ran out on him in the NFL, but, he was able to reinvent himself as he did, so many times over the course of his schematic football life as an NFL coach. And I think, you'd get even more people saying, by God, how dumb is the NFL that they let this guy slip through the cracks of the league? And Pete Carroll's getting a job He's older than Bill is. He's getting a job in Vegas, and Bill can't even sniff an interview. Like that to me would be the narrative if he's able to win anything in North Carolina.
All right, we're going to close this podcast with this amusing quote from Rob Gronkowski. He was on 10 to 2 on the Sports Hub yesterday. I think it was Beetle. Oh, Beetle and Holly were in. And this is Rob Gronkowski talk about his time in New England, the final portions of it, and his 2017 offseason behavior.
How crazy was that 2017 offseason after the Eagles Super Bowl for you?
Oh, that was a little bit wild. That was actually, I was kind of being a jerk off, and I didn't really answer Coach Belichick's phone calls or anything. I was kind of mad just how the things went down, after the Philadelphia game and all that. And then I got traded without even talking to anyone in the organization. That's how bad, it was going down. But I always wanted to be a New England Patriot, and I did not want to get traded, that year, especially with Julian still there, Tom still there at the quarterback position. And everyone's like, oh, you didn't want to go to Detroit. No, I just didn't want to leave New England, I was just being a jerk off. That's all. And then everything changed. And then I came back, and we actually went back to the Super Bowl and won it all. And that's the way to be able to leave with, happiness and a championship when I first retired.
Phil, I just wanted to play the quote because it was so friggin' funny. But it is interesting to see how Gronk and Brady in particular, not our friend Ted Johnson, he has not pocketed his irritation with Bill Belichick, but guys like Gronk, guys like Brady have been able to find a little compartment to put their Bill loathing in that was very present for a period of time and move on to this blissful place where they'll actually take blame for things that might not even have been their fault. And I have a theory on that. My theory is that because things ended the way they did for them, Gronk, Brady going to Tampa, Gronk forcing his way out of town with his unretirement in 2020 to land in Tampa Bay, they won. They won and won and won. So they, as a result, have the opportunity to be forgiving to Bill because they can be gracious in victory to Bill. And it's also good for business to have the group together. Agree or disagree? It's tough on this.
I do agree with you. I think it's easier. It's much easier to be the bigger person when you are the one who's had the storybook ending, right? And now that Bill has had this quote unquote, fall from grace where he's out of the league and he's going around and he's trying to make it work in the college game. And I know that's not what these guys are saying, but that's sort of the easy way to look at it. It's easier for them to take the high road. And so I think that's what you're seeing. I do think it's good for business for Bill specifically. Maybe for Gronk and maybe for Brady, they're in the media. Maybe for Brady, it's an ear to bend as you are now helping run an NFL organization yourself out there in Vegas. But for Bill specifically, it's great for him to be on good terms with these guys because the kids that you're trying to recruit, to some degree, idolize these guys. And so if you're in the media saying nice things about them and vice versa, to me, that can only help as you're pursuing a 5-star quarterback. And you just saw Tom Brady crying, happy tears because of all the great years that he and Bill Belichick spent together. It feels like Brady cries every time they get together in a public setting, which is a little funny to me now. But that could only help Bill, right? I mean, that is good business for Bill.
Either that or you say a Stockholm syndrome, just latent Stockholm syndrome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be at the Super Bowl beginning Sunday. We will get there Sunday. Phil and I will pick up our credentials. We'll probably go to a nice dinner that night. We're going to find a nice place to eat dinner because after that, it starts to get busy. So Sunday or Monday, we're getting a nice dinner. We'll keep you posted on what we do down there. But we have a fleet of guests lined up. Quick Slants will come live from the Super Bowl. We'll have a Next Pats podcast undoubtedly live from the Super Bowl. We will be all over the Patriots offseason. We will be all over draft forecasting from down there. That's why we go down there. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. You can get every football topic covered and plus a whole lot more. You understand me? All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you, Phil Perry. Thank you, Skull Crusher John Henry. And we'll talk to you next week from Nolans.
Do you want to do any of your makeover transition audios?
Nah.
Makeover 2025. Making the Patriots runway ready.
That's it.
That's really good.
I'll try one which won't be nearly as good.
Still using it.
3, 2, 1. Makeover 2025.
Way too loud. Way too loud. It peaked.
Phil was too good. 3, 2, 1. I can't even compete. It was too good.
All right, we're using Phil's.
Okay.
Maybe you can use that outtake at the end too if you want.
Yeah.
Oh, this is all staying in.
That's great. Please keep it.